Hello, my young listeners. Once upon a time, the world was lost in the dark and chaotic maze of the Middle Ages, a time when fear, beliefs, and ambitions ruled the day. Lands, empires, and even life itself could change in an instant. Today, I'm taking you back to those uncertain and thrilling times. On today's journey, we'll uncover the major events that changed the course of the world and the mysteries behind them. Our first stop is in the cold winter days of 1204. The Fourth Crusade, which set off with holy intentions but quickly lost its way, ended up clawing into the heart of the Christian world, Constantinople. You'll witness how betrayal, greed, and the lust for power brought a city to its knees. But that's just the beginning. This adventure will take us not only across European lands, but also deep into the endless steppes of Asia. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the sound of desert winds and the echo of hooves hitting the ground. That's when Genghis Khan appears. From a simple steppe tribe leader to the founder of the world's largest empire, his story is one of blood and fire. You'll hear about the rise of the Mongol Empire, their terrifying westward invasions, and how they struck fear into the hearts of people everywhere. Next, I'll tell you about how this unstoppable Mongol force, like a relentless river, poured into Europe, led by Batu Khan, and pushed right into the heart of the continent. We'll wander through battles, destruction, and losses that defy reason and logic. They didn't just conquer, they changed everything they touched, ensuring that nothing would ever be the same again. On this journey, we'll experience every detail, from the glory of victories to the painful cries of those betrayed. Today, history won't be buried in dusty books, it will come alive right before your eyes, like a story told by a wise old sage, bringing the spirit of those times back to life. So buckle up and become part of this epic adventure. We're diving deep into the darkest corners of the Middle Ages, heading towards the light. The Crusades, one of the bloodiest and most tragic adventures in history. The endless struggle of the West against the East, of Christians against Muslims. But how did it all begin, right? It all started to take shape in the dark atmosphere of the 11th century. Wars, famine, and religious fanaticism in Europe came together like a spark that would ignite a massive firestorm sweeping the world. The First Crusade began in 1096. To the Europeans, the fact that Jerusalem was under Muslim control was unacceptable. When Pope Urban II delivered his passionate speech at the Council of Clermont, it struck a chord across Europe. Nobles and commoners alike swore to take up their swords and set out. The Pope's promise was grand: take back the Holy Land, and the gates of heaven will open for you. With those words, thousands of people, rich and poor, knights and farmers, began marching toward Jerusalem. The First Crusade ultimately succeeded, and in 1099 the Crusaders captured Jerusalem. But the victory came at a heavy cost. The city's civilian population was massacred, and blood ran through the streets. Jerusalem was in Crusader hands, but this was not the end of the war, it was only the beginning. Then came the Second Crusade. It started in 1147, triggered by the Seljuk Turks reclaiming the county of Edessa from the Crusaders. Fearing the loss of the Holy Lands, European kings armed themselves once again. But things didn't go as planned. The army, led by German Emperor Conrad III and French King Louis VII, set out with high hopes, but the campaign ended in complete disaster. The Crusaders couldn't work together, and their plans fell apart repeatedly. Ultimately, the sons of Seljuk Sultan Imad al-Din Zengi defeated the Crusaders, and the crusade ended in failure. It showed that the Crusaders were far from invincible. And then there was the Third Crusade. This one is perhaps the most remembered of them all. When Jerusalem was recaptured by the famous Muslim leader Saladin in 1187, it sent shockwaves through Europe. Jerusalem was no longer in Crusader hands, and this was a huge defeat for the West. In response, Holy Roman Emperor Frederick Barbarossa, French King Philip II, and English King Richard the Lionheart formed a great alliance. They assembled a massive army to retake Jerusalem, and the three kings set off on this grand crusade. But once again, things didn't go as planned. Barbarossa tragically drowned in a river during the journey, and Philip returned to Europe shortly after. This left only Richard the Lionheart to face Saladin in a relentless struggle filled with sieges, battles, and negotiations. Richard didn't manage to recapture Jerusalem, but a peace treaty was made with Saladin, and the city remained under Muslim control. Despite this, Richard's bravery lived on as a legend in the West. All these crusades were like links in a chain, driven by the power struggles of European nobles and kings, religious beliefs, and an endless quest for glory. Eventually, these crusades paved the way for the Fourth Crusade, the most tragic of them all. But this time, the target wasn't Jerusalem, it was one of Christianity's greatest cities, Constantinople. Disputes between the Eastern and Western churches, commercial interests, and personal ambitions all came together, leading the Crusaders to turn their swords against their own fellow Christians. So that's the long and bloody journey of the Crusades. Now we're heading into the most surprising and unexpected events, the Fourth Crusade and the Fall of Constantinople. If you're ready, let's dive deep into the heart of this tragic story. The year is 1202. Nobles and knights from all across Europe had geared up for a new campaign to the Holy Land. This time, the target wasn't Jerusalem, but one of the biggest cities in the East, Constantinople. However, this complex and surprising story begins with the significant role of the Venetian Republic. Venice was a major naval power at the time. The city was known for its impressive fleet and success in maritime trade. Initially, the Crusaders planned to make a deal with the Venetians to get to the Holy Land. But this deal wasn't just a commercial agreement, it was also part of a complicated political game. The Doge of Venice, Enrico Dandolo, had made an agreement with the Crusaders to handle the financial burden of the campaign. However, as the campaign got underway, many problems arose. The Crusader army couldn't gather the necessary funds and ships. Knights and nobles didn't get what they paid for, and the progress of the campaign was in jeopardy. The Venetians seized this crisis as an opportunity and started demanding more payment from the Crusaders. At this point, an unexpected twist occurred. The Crusaders' target shifted from Jerusalem to something more aligned with Venetian interests. Venice, as an ally of the Crusaders, suggested a different target to advance their own interests, the Christian city of Zara, now Zadar, Croatia. Zara was part of the Christian world at that time and held strategic importance for the Venetians. Following Venetian ambitions and interests, the Crusader army turned away from the Holy Land and headed for Zara. The sack of Zara became a significant tragedy in the history of the Crusades. The city was destroyed in the fury of the Crusaders and Venetian interests. This attack on a Christian city shocked the entire Christian world. The fall and plunder of Zara undermined confidence in the Crusades and led to a major moral collapse. But the events didn't stop there. After capturing Zara, the Crusaders set their sights on Constantinople, the capital of the East. This city was the heart of the Byzantine Empire and had now become the Crusaders' target. The beginning of the Fourth Crusade had a complex political and religious background. What started as a mission to reclaim the Holy Land turned increasingly into conflicts of interest and internal divisions. As Venetian interests redirected the Crusaders' focus, attacks on Christian cities showed just how complicated and bloody this grand struggle had become. So, the start of the Fourth Crusade tells us not just about a military campaign, but also about the intricate relationships between religion and politics, and how religious beliefs and personal interests intertwined. Now, following these dramatic developments, we'll witness how the Crusaders' journey continued and how they made Constantinople their target. If you're ready, Let's continue this exciting journey and step toward the climax of the Fourth Crusade, the capture of Constantinople. The year is 1203. As the Crusader army gathered from all over Europe advances towards their target, they're now focused on the heart of the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople. But this march towards the grand and magnificent city involves much more than just a military campaign. Let's take a journey back in time to understand the chaos within the Byzantine Empire and how the Crusaders turned this situation to their advantage. At this stage of the Fourth Crusade, the Byzantine Empire was in the midst of great internal conflict and political turmoil. The empire was shaken by power struggles. The conflicts between Emperor Alexios III and Isaac I had weakened Byzantium's political and military strength. Both emperors wanted the same throne, and this situation ignited the spark of civil war. Emperor Alexios III, who took the throne in 1195, unjustly deposed Isaac I, whom he saw as his uncle and successor. Isaac I was a popular ruler among the people, and his loss of the throne caused significant unrest within Byzantine society. By 1203, Isaac I's supporters, with the help of the Crusaders, were seeking to restore him to power. This was when opportunities started to arise for the Crusaders. The internal chaos of Byzantium further complicated the Crusaders' plans. The weakness of Alexios II's government affected the Crusaders' goals and strategies towards Constantinople. Seeing the internal conflicts and weak government of Byzantium as an opportunity, the Crusaders moved to reinstate Isaac II. This led the Crusaders to shift their focus not only to the Holy Land, but also to the heart of the Byzantine Empire. The empire's internal politics had led to its weakening and tumultuous state. The Byzantine Empire had become militarily and economically weak. Wars, internal conflicts, and economic difficulties had diminished its defensive capabilities. The walls of Constantinople had lost their former grandeur and strength. Observing this weakening, the Crusaders sharpened their strategies for capturing Constantinople. Internal strife and weak leadership opened a door for the Crusaders to conquer this grand and ancient city. The chaos within Byzantium played a significant role in determining and initiating the Crusaders' objectives. Now let's take a closer look at the process of the capture of Constantinople in light of Byzantine internal conflicts and how the Crusaders took advantage of the situation. We'll continue to delve into all the fine details of this grand event and explore the depths of this historic struggle. The year is 1204. In the eyes of the Crusaders, Constantinople, the heart of the Eastern Roman Empire, has become not just a target but a great prize. The city's towering walls represent one of the most magnificent and formidable defenses in history. However, the Crusaders' appetite and determination, combined with their desire to conquer this great city, set the stage for these groundbreaking events. First, the Crusaders arrived at the massive walls of Constantinople. The city was famous for its fortifications, which protected it like a fortress, remnants of the Roman Empire. The Crusaders' initial attempt to besiege the city was highly challenging. The struggles in front of the walls involved not only military but also psychological warfare. The difficulties the Crusaders faced would determine the course of this campaign. However, the strategic role of the Venetians was crucial in overcoming this difficult siege. The Venetian Republic's fleet was critical to the success of the campaign. The city's protection from the sea was provided by Venetian warships. The Venetians contributed not only a large fleet but also experienced sailors and strategists. This strategic strength made it harder to defend Constantinople against sea-based threats. With the support of the Venetian fleet, the Crusaders' siege plans became more effective, and the greatest obstacle to defending Constantinople was this sea power. However, the situation within Constantinople was also a significant factor affecting the outcome of the battle. Understanding the internal support and betrayals within the city played a key role in understanding the event's development. Alexios IV Angelos had made a deal with the Crusaders, promising to surrender the city to them. This agreement reflected the Byzantine Empire's complex internal politics. Alexios IV Angelos had sought Crusader help to stay on the imperial throne. However, the promises made in exchange for this help impacted the future of the Byzantine Empire. Alexios IV Angelos's agreement with the Crusaders indicated the unstable nature of internal support. The supporters inside the city gained power with the Crusaders' arrival, but betrayals and uncertainties also increased. This internal chaos made the Crusaders' siege process even more complicated. Constantinople was struggling with external threats on one side and internal conflicts on the other. The siege of Constantinople went down in history not just as a military conflict but as a blend of strategy, betrayal, and political struggles. The Crusaders' initial attempts at siege, the strategic role of the Venetian fleet, and Alexios IV Angelos's internal support and betrayals were key moments of this great siege. Now it's time to dive deeper into the outcome of these events and how Constantinople was ultimately conquered. The year is 1204. The majestic walls of Constantinople, the heart of the Roman Empire, struggled to withstand the Crusaders' fury and greed. The brutal nature of the conflict and the complexities of strategic maneuvers brought this great city face to face with its fate. The moment when the Crusaders successfully completed the siege and captured Constantinople became a turning point etched in history. However, the sweet scent of victory was hidden behind a dark plunder that effectively destroyed the city's spirit and heritage. As the Crusaders breached Constantinople's walls, they entered with a sense of triumph and excitement. But the aftermath revealed signs of catastrophe. The city was filled with both intense anger and exhaustion. The Crusaders seized the opportunity to plunder the valuable treasures and immense structures of this ancient city. When the gates of Constantinople opened, the Crusaders saw a dream of victory. But this dream also opened the door to the city's destruction. As the city was dragged into disaster from every corner, it became nothing more than a source of spoils for the Crusaders. Everything in the city, from precious stones to magnificent artworks, was being plundered. Churches, as spiritual centers of Constantinople, were the first targets of the Crusaders' looting. The gold coverings, precious stones, and sacred items inside the grand churches were stripped away. These holy places, once dedicated to the presence of God, were now ruthlessly plundered. The walls of the churches, once adorned with sacred writings carrying the prayers of worshippers, were now covered with greed and avarice. But churches were only the beginning. Palaces, grand structures, and mansions reflecting Constantinople's splendor were reduced to ruins by the Crusaders' plunder. Valuable items, artworks, and historical treasures found within the palaces were seized by the Crusaders' greed. The city's dazzling wealth suddenly fell into the clutches of destruction. Unique artworks and historical artifacts, once reflecting the refined culture of an empire, were now left as mere remnants. This plundering was not just a physical devastation but an assault on the city's spirit, culture, and history. Constantinople's heart, once shining as a symbol of a great empire, was deeply scarred by the Crusaders' victory. The city, once a beacon of a great civilization, now cast a shadow of disaster over the remnants of that civilization. The fall of the city, marked by the pain and sorrow left in the wake of the Crusaders' victory, will remain a dark chapter in history. The sack of Constantinople represents not only the fall of a city, but also the destruction of a culture, a civilization, and an era. This great disaster will serve as a warning in history books, and will always be remembered as a significant event. Ah, dear friends, let us step into the story of a great and complex schism that once stood at the heart of empires and religions. This deep rift between East and West was not just a religious disagreement, but a historical turning point. The split between the Orthodox and Catholic churches echoed through the depths of history, with both religious and political repercussions. The year was 1054. In Constantinople, the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, the waters had risen and the walls had thickened between it and Rome, the capital of the Western Roman Empire. These two great churches were increasingly drifting apart due to their differing religious beliefs and rituals. The roots of this division were filled with long-standing political and theological disputes. First, my friends, let's look at the roots of this split. The leaders of both churches, the Pope in the West and the Patriarch in the East, were struggling to maintain authority in their respective realms. In the West, the Pope held absolute power in the heart of Rome, while in the East, the Patriarch in Constantinople stood at the center of the Christian world. Disagreements between these two power centers regarding religious leadership and authority gradually transformed into a larger conflict. Differences in religious rituals were also a significant part of this conflict. While Catholics in the West believed in the transformation of bread and wine into the body and blood of Christ, the Orthodox in the East opposed this view. Additionally, the Filioque controversy, which concerned whether the Holy Spirit proceeded from the Father alone or from both the Father and the Son, further deepened the divide between the two churches. We cannot ignore the impact of the Fourth Crusade on the deepening of this schism. When the Crusaders sacked Constantinople, relations between the West and East became severely strained. The plundering of the heart of the Eastern Roman Empire caused not only material but also spiritual wounds. The destruction of Constantinople's Christian heritage shattered the trust between the Eastern and Western churches. This event intensified and solidified the already existing disagreements between the two churches. By 1054, this deep rift was officially cemented as a result of the disputes between the leaders of the churches. The mutual excommunication of Pope Leo VIII and Patriarch Michael Cerularius formalized the split between the two churches. These excommunications, instead of offering a last hope for reconciliation, only deepened the schism. The consequences of this great split had profound effects, not just religiously but also politically and culturally. While the Catholic Church in the West continued to dominate the former territories of the Roman Empire, the Orthodox Church in the East maintained its traditions. This division left a lasting impact on church reforms and political balances in Europe. Dear friends, this great schism led to the East and West forging different paths, leaving permanent marks on the history of both churches. The split between the Orthodox and Catholic churches resulted in the emergence of two distinct paths, both religiously and culturally. Exploring the effects of this schism deep in history helps us understand the complexity of the past and the diversity of human history. Imagine a time when, in the heart of a once great empire, the magnificent city of Constantinople, the jewel of Byzantium, has fallen, and a new power rises in its place. In 1204, with the Crusaders' capture of the city, the glorious days of Byzantium came to an end. Following the siege and sacking of Constantinople, a new regime from the West established the Latin Empire. Let's explore the details of this event. Dear friends, the once glorious capital of the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople, was now in the hands of the Latins. The Latins seized the opportunity when the city fell, and in 1204, proclaimed the establishment of the Latin Empire in Constantinople. This new empire was shaped under the influence of Crusaders and Venetians from Western Europe. The Latin Empire began to establish a new administration over the former Byzantine lands and started reconstructing the city in a Western style. The creation of the Latin Empire marked the end of Byzantium and the rebirth of this great city as a Latin stronghold. However, this new administration struggled to maintain the complex social and economic structures of Byzantium. The city was grappling with both internal and external challenges. With the fall of Constantinople, other regions of the Byzantine Empire were also plunged into chaos. Former Byzantine territories were divided into various small principalities beyond the Latin Empire's conquests. These small principalities preserved fragments of Byzantine's rich history and cultural heritage. During this period, many small principalities and beyliks emerged on the former Byzantine lands. These were new states established by local Byzantine nobility resisting Latin rule. Each one tried to live independently while continuing their resistance against the Latin Empire. This fragmentation led to the loss of Byzantine's former grandeur and solidified the Latin dominance in the city. After the capture of Constantinople by the Latins, significant social and economic changes occurred within the city. The new Latin administration drastically altered the traditional Byzantine structure. The effects of these changes were felt throughout the city. The social structure of Constantinople saw a sharp division between Latins and Byzantines. While Latins dominated the high offices and administrative positions, Byzantines were generally pushed into lower social and economic strata. This created tensions and conflicts between the two groups. The Latins' appropriation of Byzantine's former wealth and cultural heritage was met with discontent from the local population. The Latin administration attempted to maintain its dominance by keeping the Byzantines under social and economic pressure. Economically, Constantinople under Latin rule experienced a difficult period. The city had been heavily damaged by the Crusaders and Latins' plundering. The new Latin administration's approach affected the city's trade and economy. Many trade routes and economic activities that thrived during the Byzantine era stagnated under Latin rule. The city's economic vitality significantly decreased. Although the Latins tried to utilize the former Byzantine infrastructure, many crucial trade routes and marketplaces had been damaged. The Latin administration attempted to rebuild Constantinople, but this process was marked by cultural and architectural changes. The Latins destroyed or transformed some of the Byzantine structures. Many elements of Byzantine culture gradually disappeared under Latin rule. The city's churches, once elegant Byzantine structures, were replaced with more Western-style buildings. This transformation led to significant losses in both the visual and cultural identity of Constantinople. Dear friends, the period of Constantinople under Latin rule was a pivotal moment in the city's history. The establishment of the Latin Empire and the division of Byzantium into small principalities brought about substantial social and economic changes. While the city was being restructured under Latin dominance, it lost the traces of Byzantine grandeur. Understanding this period is crucial for grasping the complexity of history and the profound impacts of significant changes on people's lives. The era of Constantinople under the Latin Empire left a lasting mark on history and influenced the city's future development. Dear friends, in the grand cycle of history, sometimes the fall of one empire paves the way for the rise of another. Such was the case in 1204, when the great Byzantine capital of Constantinople was captured by the Latin Empire. Yet, after this dark period, a glimmer of hope began to shine in the heart of Byzantium. The story of resistance and resurgence that followed is one of the most inspiring and remarkable in history. By the mid-13th century, hope for the restoration of the Byzantine Empire's former glory began to take root in the Greek lands. The Latin Empire's dominance over Constantinople had led to significant resistance and upheaval within the city. The long-awaited moment of liberation for Byzantium did not come until 1261. During this time, the Byzantines, including key figures from the old imperial court, secretly organized a resistance against Latin rule. One of the most prominent leaders of this resistance was Michael Palaiologos, a determined and courageous figure in Byzantine history. Michael was driven by the dream of restoring the Byzantine Empire to its former splendor. To achieve this, he developed various strategies and fought for Byzantium's revival. Under his leadership, the Byzantines launched a rebellion against the Latin Empire. This rebellion saw the unification of several small principalities within Byzantine territories, forming a collective resistance movement. The year 1261 is recorded as one of the brightest periods in Byzantine history. Led by Michael Palaiologos, the Byzantines launched a major offensive and took action to liberate Constantinople. During this period, the strategic acumen and determination of the Byzantines played a crucial role in ending Latin rule. The operation to reclaim Constantinople was also a testament to great courage and dedication. The Byzantines conducted attacks by both land and sea to regain the city. During this operation, they effectively exploited the weaknesses of the Latin defenders. Under Michael Palaiologos' leadership, the Byzantines meticulously followed a strategy to breach the city walls. Internal support within the city and the exploitation of the Latin administration's weaknesses provided significant advantages. With Michael Palaiologos at the helm, the Byzantine army breached the city walls and entered Constantinople, ending Latin control. This victory was a major morale booster for the Byzantines, and the city was once again under Byzantine rule. The return of Constantinople to the Byzantine Empire also involved a reorganization of the city's social and economic structure. The city, which had been devastated during Latin rule, was rebuilt by the Byzantines. Churches, palaces, and public buildings were reconstructed with the elegant details of Byzantine architecture. This reconstruction process was part of the broader effort to restore Byzantine grandeur. As the city tried to return to its former glory, it also sought to erase the marks left by the Latin period. The Byzantines worked with great dedication to rebuild Constantinople and bring back its former splendor. During this process, the city experienced both cultural and economic revival. Dear friends, the liberation of Constantinople from Latin rule was a significant turning point in history. The revival of the Byzantine Empire represented a great victory for both the city and the empire. The operation led by Michael Palaeologus was a powerful symbol of Byzantine resistance and resurgence. This historical event marked the end of one era in Byzantine history and the beginning of a new one. The return of Constantinople to Byzantine control shaped the future development of the empire and left a lasting mark in the depths of history. While all this was happening in the West, something entirely different was unfolding in the East. The seeds of what would become the largest and most ruthless empire in history were starting to sprout. My dear friends, I'm about to take you on a journey through the depths of history's steps, telling the story like a wise old sage. Today we'll dive deep into Genghis Khan's youth, how he united the Mongol tribes, and how he harnessed the power of the steppes. Get ready, because this journey will open the doors to a major transformation that once took place across Asia's vast plains. On those long, cold, and windy steppes, under the endless blue sky, there was a young man drifting like a ghost. That was Genghis Khan, the man who would become one of history's greatest rulers. Back then, Genghis Khan was still young and fighting a brutal battle for survival in the harsh conditions of the steppes. His youth wasn't just about survival, it marked the beginning of the foundation for a future great empire. The time Genghis Khan was born was on the brink of a major change beyond the traditional way of life on the Mongol steppes. At that time, the Mongols were divided into many different tribes and clans, and these groups often clashed, leading to frequent wars and conflicts. Genghis Khan's youth was spent amidst these conflicts and chaos. Genghis Khan, originally named Temujin, was born in 1162. His childhood was shaped by the death of his father from poisoning and the hardships his family faced. After his father's death, Temujin had to fight hard to protect his family and tribe. This tough period helped him develop his leadership skills and understand the political landscape of the Mongol steppes. Young Temujin set out to bring order to the chaotic steppes. He worked hard to end the divisions and conflicts among the Mongol tribes and unite these different groups under one banner. He used his intelligence, strategic thinking, and personal charisma to bring the surrounding tribes together. Genghis Khan became known for his military strategies and leadership skills. Under his leadership, the Mongol tribes came together and became a formidable force. One of Genghis Khan's greatest achievements was defeating and incorporating his enemies and rivals one by one, drawing them to his side. This strategic approach helped him rise as an effective leader and establish dominance over the steppes. The Mongol steppes were famous for their warriors. These warriors were known for their mobility, endurance, and combat strategies. Genghis Khan integrated this warrior power into his complex battle strategies, managing his army with both discipline and effectiveness. His military tactics were based on speed, maneuverability, and strategic thinking. Genghis Khan's expertise in battle rendered his enemies ineffective both psychologically and physically. His warriors, with their archery skills and speed, could surprise and overwhelm their foes, changing the course of battles. Genghis Khan's military strategies involved not just combat techniques but also logistics and intelligence. Genghis Khan's charisma was one of the key factors in uniting the Mongol tribes. His leadership was shaped not only by military successes but also by his personal qualities. Genghis Khan earned loyalty and respect through his values of justice, honesty, and bravery. From a young age, Temujin fought a tough battle for survival and eventually transformed into a great ruler. This transformation reflected both his personal and military skills. By uniting the Mongol tribes, he took a significant step toward building a vast empire. Genghis Khan's achievements left a deep mark in history and carved his name as a legendary leader. My dear friends, that's how we gain a deep understanding of Genghis Khan's youth and the process of uniting the Mongol tribes. In this fascinating period of history, the power of the steppes in Genghis Khan's leadership opened the doors to a major change. In the next step, we'll dive deeper into the formation of this great empire and Genghis Khan's conquests. Get ready, because history is about to take us on an epic adventure. My dear friends, we are stepping into an era where an incredible drama unfolded on the stage of history. Now I'm going to take you through the vision of leadership of Genghis Khan, the mighty ruler of the steppes, and the creation of the Mongol army, followed by the details of his first conquests extending all the way to the gates of China. Like sitting around a calm fire, let's embark on this fascinating journey into the depths of history. In the depths of the steppes, the foundations of a major change were being laid. Genghis Khan was starting the first steps toward building a great empire, observing the sky and waging wars fueled by the fire within him. Young Temujin strengthened his leadership not only with his military genius but also with his visionary thinking. Under the command of the sky god Tengri, Genghis Khan aimed to establish a dominion beyond these lands while laying the groundwork for an empire. In the wild nature of the steppes, Genghis Khan began building his army as if he were appointed by a god. This was not just an army of warriors but a military machine known for its discipline, strategic intelligence, and loyalty. Genghis Khan shaped the Mongol army to reflect the freedom and harshness of the steppes. Each individual underwent rigorous training to help realize their leader's grand vision. Genghis Khan's leadership style made him a deeply respected figure among his warriors and people. Under his command, the Mongol army revolutionized not only warfare but also strategy and management. Genghis Khan trained each warrior to be effective and efficient not only in battle but also in daily life. This training gave him an army that was strong both physically and mentally. After establishing his Mongol army, Genghis Khan turned his gaze toward the gates of China. The Jin dynasty became one of the first targets of this great empire. Genghis Khan's military strategies and leadership vision encouraged him and his army to expand into a much larger region. The Mongols began advancing toward the borders of the Jin dynasty. Genghis Khan's strategies were not just about direct confrontations, they also involved discovering his enemy's weaknesses and using that information to his advantage. During their campaigns against the Jin dynasty, the Mongols combined traditional battle techniques with cleverly crafted strategies. Under Genghis Khan's leadership, the Mongol army rapidly advanced into China's interior. This progress marked a significant success both militarily and strategically. The Jin dynasty's defense systems struggled to withstand the Mongols' swift and effective attacks. Genghis Khan's military intelligence and strategies played a crucial role in the success of these conquests. One of the most important factors behind the Mongol army's success was the military intelligence of the steppes. Genghis Khan gained a significant advantage over his enemies by using both traditional and innovative techniques to develop his battle strategies. The Mongols were known for their speed, agility, and effective use of archers on the battlefield. Genghis Khan's strategic plans were carefully crafted to maximize this warrior power. The battles at the gates of China were a test of Genghis Khan's military skills and leadership vision. As the Mongol army breached the Jin dynasty's defenses, Genghis Khan's strategic moves laid the foundation for these victories. The campaigns into China's interior showcased the Mongols' military power and strategic intelligence. My dear friends, that's how we saw Genghis Khan's leadership vision and the creation of the Mongol army intertwined with his conquests at the gates of China. In this grand chapter of history, the mighty leader of the steppes took a significant step toward building his empire, leaving a deep mark on Asia's history. In the next step, we'll explore the story of this great empire's expansion into even broader territories and other parts of Genghis Khan's conquests. Get ready, because a grand adventure awaits us in the depths of history. My dear friends, another great revolution is unfolding on the stage of history. Now I will take you through Genghis Khan's conquests into the depths of Central Asia and how he established control over the Silk Road in detail. If you're ready, let's embark on this grand historical journey with the great leader of the steppes. In the boundless steppes of Central Asia, this great empire, rising to the sky, burned with a desire to expand its territories. As the mighty leader of the steppes, Genghis Khan set his sights on the heart of Central Asia and began his campaign to establish dominance over these vast lands. With each step, he utilized his strategic intelligence and military genius to initiate a major conquest. One of Genghis Khan's first targets was the Kara Khitan. The Kara Khitan were known as one of the significant states in Central Asia. However, Genghis Khan, eyeing the lands of this powerful state, managed to overcome this obstacle with his military strategies. By discovering the weaknesses of the Kara Khitan, Genghis Khan exploited the strategic vulnerabilities of his enemies and gained superiority over them. The extensive lands of the Kara Khitan were conquered through the powerful and effective campaigns of the Mongol army. Genghis Khan's campaigns against the Kara Khitan showcased his mastery and foresight in military strategies. Controlling this crucial region of Central Asia became a critical step in the expansion of Genghis Khan's empire. Another power that drew Genghis Khan's attention was the Karakhanids. The Karakhanids held rich and strategic lands in Central Asia. The campaigns against the Karakhanids once again demonstrated Genghis Khan's military strength and strategic intelligence. The attacks on the Karakhanids were part of Genghis Khan's efforts to expand his empire. The campaigns against the Karakhanids marked not only military but also strategic success. After these campaigns, another significant territory in Central Asia came under Mongol dominance. Lastly, Genghis Khan targeted the Khwarezmian Shahs. The Khwarezmian Shahs were one of the powerful and wealthy states in Central Asia. However, Genghis Khan's decisive and effective strategies provided a significant advantage against the Khwarezmian Shah's great power. The campaigns against the Khwarezmian Shahs once again proved Genghis Khan's military brilliance. The lands of the Khwarezmian Shahs were conquered by the Mongols and became a part of the empire. During his campaigns into the depths of Central Asia, Genghis Khan not only achieved military successes but also established control over the Silk Road. The Silk Road was one of Asia's most important trade routes, and this route was a crucial part of Genghis Khan's empire, both economically and strategically. Control of the Silk Road provided Genghis Khan with a significant strategic advantage. Managing the trade routes not only brought economic gains but also reinforced the political and military power of the empire. By establishing dominance over this route, Genghis Khan ensured the growth of his empire and neutralized the influence of other regional powers. Dear history enthusiasts, now I will take you into the depths of Central Asia, to witness the struggle for dominance under a star shining brightly in the sky. Genghis Khan's conquests were becoming more and more legendary each day, and one of the most striking chapters of this legend was his campaign against the Khwarezmian Empire. This campaign was not just a military campaign, but a major turning point in history. If you're ready, let's take a detailed look at this significant event. In the vast lands of Central Asia, the fire in Genghis Khan's chest illuminated the entire region. Genghis Khan's ambitions were not confined to the steppes alone, but extended to conquering the great empires surrounding him. One of these ambitions targeted the Khwarezmian Empire, a powerful state ruled by the Persian sovereigns. The Khwarezmian Empire was known as a formidable and influential power in these vast lands. However, in Genghis Khan's eyes, this great empire stood as an obstacle that needed to be conquered. It all began with the Khwarezmian Empire's hostile attitude towards the Mongol Empire. While Genghis Khan sought a diplomatic resolution, the Khwarezmians' disrespect and provocations towards Mongol envoys opened the doors to a major conflict. These events sparked tensions between the two great powers, prompting Genghis Khan to act in response to the Khwarezmians' antagonistic stance. Genghis Khan's first move was to attack the most important cities and strategic points of the Khwarezmian Empire. During this period, when the Mongol army swiftly entered Khwarezmian territory and delivered its first major blow, the Khwarezmians' defense strategies proved inadequate. Genghis Khan's campaigns were notable not only for their military successes but also for the extensive destruction they caused. The cities of the Khwarezmian Empire were shattered by the Mongol army's ruthless attacks. The rich cities of Khwarezm, including libraries, palaces, and temples, suffered massive devastation. The inhabitants of these cities faced the brutal face of war and rebellion. The ancient cities of Khwarezm were looted by the Mongols, and the remnants of this great empire were buried in history. The Khwarezmian Empire fell completely under the relentless campaigns of Genghis Khan. The Mongol army's military superiority and strategic intelligence conquered Khwarezm's lands and secured a place for this great empire in the annals of history. This collapse significantly altered the balance of power in Central Asia and further expanded the boundaries of Genghis Khan's empire. This campaign was not just a military success, but also a period that solidified Genghis Khan's legendary status in history. The fall of the Khwarezmian Empire demonstrated the greatness and power of the Mongol Empire and cemented its dominance over Central Asia. Dear history enthusiasts, today I'm taking you on an exciting journey from the majestic and vast lands of Central Asia through the Mongol Empire's expansion efforts into Russia's dark paths and to the distant corners of Eastern Europe. This journey will delve into the story of the Mongol Empire's conquests that extended not only through Asia but deep into Europe as well. If you're ready, let's start exploring these grand campaigns of Genghis Khan's successors with intriguing details. Once upon a time, the Mongol Empire, rising from the vast steppes of Central Asia, continued to expand after the death of Genghis Khan, driven by his heirs. During this period, Mongol conquests reached not only the depths of Asia, but also the eastern borders of Europe. Now we'll trace the paths of these grand campaigns and uncover all the details of the events that unfolded. After Genghis Khan's death, the empire rapidly continued its expansion, with the Caucasus region becoming a significant part of this growth. The Caucasus was not only a strategic area but also a complex region inhabited by diverse ethnic and cultural groups. The Mongols developed a major military strategy to conquer this challenging geography. When the Mongols entered the Caucasus, they faced mountains and harsh weather conditions that complicated their military tactics. However, the Mongol leaders, with their agile and experienced soldiers, managed to overcome these challenges. Various cities and fortresses in the Caucasus fell to the Mongol military superiority. This region became an important base for Mongol expansion, and the rich lands of the Caucasus enhanced the Mongol Empire's strategic advantages. After the Caucasus, the Mongols set their sights even further west, on the distant corners of Eastern Europe. This region played a significant role in the complex political and military map of the Middle Ages. When the Mongols launched their first incursions here, they began an operation that would shake the historical balance of Eastern Europe. The initial invasions into Eastern Europe revealed the Mongols' military power and strategic skills. As the Mongols entered the region, they created significant chaos among local kingdoms and principalities. The Mongol army advanced rapidly, conquering various cities and fortresses. These invasions placed local powers under great threat and allowed the Mongols to exert influence over many areas in Eastern Europe. The Mongol invasions of the Caucasus and Eastern Europe were notable not only for their military successes but also for their strategic maneuvers. These conquests enabled the Mongols to become an influential power across a vast geography and significantly altered regional balances. The Mongol Empire's impact in these areas was of great importance both militarily and commercially. These incursions into Eastern Europe were a sign of the Mongols' desire to expand westward, and this expansion deeply affected the regional power balance. By maintaining their military superiority in these regions, the Mongols solidified their dominance over a wide area, and these conquests became a crucial part of medieval European history. Dear history enthusiasts, today I'm taking you on a journey through the pinnacle of the Mongol Empire and the final years of its great leader, Genghis Khan, as well as the period following his death. This grand story encompasses not only the final years of an empire but also the life of one of history's greatest military and political figures. If you're ready, let's dive into this fascinating journey. The final years of Genghis Khan's life were crucial not only personally but also for the fate of the entire Mongol Empire. Under Genghis Khan's rule, the Mongol Empire reached its zenith. At this point, the vast boundaries of this empire stretched from the expansive steppes of Asia to the gates of Europe. However, like every great empire, behind these tremendous achievements lay significant plans and strategies. In his later years, Genghis Khan was formulating detailed plans to further expand the empire's borders and launch major campaigns to the west. These plans were among the boldest and most ambitious aspects of his military vision. The Western campaigns reflected Genghis Khan's desire to strengthen his empire even more and conquer new territories. However, the end of the lives of history's great heroes often signifies the beginning of a new era. Genghis Khan's death marked a significant turning point in the history of the Mongol Empire. The passing of the great Khan created substantial uncertainty for the future of the vast empire he had built. Following Genghis Khan's death, the empire entered a phase of significant division. During this time, a struggle emerged among Genghis Khan's three sons Ogedei, Jabi, and Jibi over the governance of the empire. This division led to the emergence of different administrations in various regions of the empire and weakened the central authority of the Mongol Empire. The division of the empire particularly complicated the execution of planned Western conquests. After Genghis Khan's death, the plans for Western campaigns evolved under the leadership of his son Kublai Khan, shifting towards different strategic maneuvers for other regions of the empire. During this period, different regions of the Mongol Empire were governed by their local administrations, leading to various regional leaderships within the vast empire. After Genghis Khan's death, there was continuous conflict and power struggles among these regional leaders. These conflicts threatened the unity and integrity of the empire. In the period of division of the Mongol Empire, Batu Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, was preparing to establish his own state. This state was called the Golden Horde, and it would spread its horses across every corner of Europe, bringing fear to every home and every village. On a dark steppe night, gazing at the stars, I want to share a saga from the depths of history. Batu Khan's rise not only expanded the western borders of the Mongol Empire, but also marked a turning point that changed the course of history. As Genghis Khan's grandson, Batu Khan took on the monumental task of carrying forward the Mongol legacy with great determination, leading him to a grand campaign of conquest to the west. In the winter of 1237, as Batu Khan directed the Mongol armies westward across the frozen steppes, the inhabitants of the Russian lands were unaware of the great disaster looming over them. This first campaign into the depths of Russia was not just a military operation, but an event that would determine the fate of the region's people. Batu Khan and his army set out from the northern shores of the Black Sea on a journey towards the heart of the Russian principalities. Their first target was the city of Ryazan, which was quickly captured by the Mongols. The fall of Ryazan demonstrated the effectiveness of Batu Khan's military strategies and instilled great fear among the Russian principalities. Following these successes, Batu Khan's army targeted major cities such as Moscow, Vladimir, and Novgorod. Moscow, then a small city-state, was heavily damaged by the Mongols. Vladimir and Novgorod, important centers in northern Russia, also suffered from the Mongols' brutal attacks. Batu Khan's forces breached the city walls, causing massive destruction and pushing the local populations to the brink of surrender. The impact of these campaigns was measured not only by military victories but also by the fear and devastation they left in the region. Batu Khan's conquests solidified the Mongol influence in the west and laid the foundations of the Golden Horde. The fall of Kiev marked the pinnacle of Batu Khan's western conquests. Kiev, one of Russia's historical and cultural centers, was heavily damaged when the Mongols captured it. By conquering Kiev, Batu Khan reinforced the Mongol Empire's dominance in the west and established the Golden Horde as a central authority. Along with Kiev, cities like Vladimir and Novgorod also fell under the Golden Horde's control, further enhancing the Mongols' influence in the region. After these conquests, Batu Khan and the Mongol armies structured the Golden Horde not just as a military power but also as a regional administration. The Mongols emerged as effective leaders in the governance of this new state on Russian soil, turning the Golden Horde into the most important power center of the Mongol Empire in the west. This process solidified the Mongols' legacy in the west and left a significant mark on the course of history. Batu Khan's great westward conquests reinforced the Mongol Empire's influence in the west and represented a key turning point in the history of this great empire. Throughout history, these grand conquests and the establishment of the Golden Horde deeply affected the political and cultural landscape of the region. Under Batu Khan's leadership, these campaigns not only achieved military successes, but also aimed to enhance the Mongol Empire's influence in the West, cementing their legacy on the historical stage. As a sage who has witnessed the bloodiest and greatest battles in history and lived through the past, I now invite you to the battlefields of Eastern Europe, where resistance was mounted against the Mongol armies. These fields, vibrating with the intensity of the clashes, were the stage for moments that changed the course of history. The battles of Legnica and Mohyl stand as monumental events where the ruthless power of the Mongol armies met Europe's desperate resistance, leaving marks that will never fade from history. The Mongol Empire, stretching from the Karakum Desert to the Ural Mountains, was ravaging not just Asia but Europe under the leadership of Batu Khan. The Mongols, with their boundless warrior spirit and seemingly invincible armies, had arrived at the gates of the West. Batu Khan and his renowned general Subutai had mastered the art of war, becoming the nightmares of their enemies with their strategies and tactics. Their goal was to subjugate Europe and expand the Mongol Empire's borders to an endless horizon. The Battle of Legnica broke out on a cold spring day in 1241 in the heart of present-day Poland, on the Silesian plains. As the Mongol armies approached the gates of Legnica, Europe's bravest knights and armies gathered to face them. Europe had rallied all its might in the hope of halting the Mongols' ruthless advance. German knights, Polish warriors, support troops from Bohemia, and Hungarian mercenaries came together as a unified force against the Mongol army at Legnica. However, the Mongol strategy was designed to confuse and weaken their enemies. The Mongol forces, under Subutai's command, routed the European forces with unexpected maneuvers and swift cavalry. The knights were forced to retreat under a deadly barrage of Mongol arrows. The battlefield of Legnica turned into a killing ground where Europe's brave warriors met their end. The victory at Legnica once again demonstrated the power of the Mongols and brought them even closer to the heart of Eastern Europe. Fueled by this triumph, Batu Khan set his sights on even bigger goals: Hungary. The Mongols now faced the Hungarian plains and the gates of Eastern Europe wide open. These lands would soon echo with the sound of Mongol cavalry hooves, setting the stage for one of history's greatest battles, the Battle of Mohi. The Battle of Mohi took place in April 1241, on the banks of the Tisza River in the heart of Hungary, between the Mongol armies and the Hungarian forces led by King Bela IV. The armies, lined up on both sides of the river, were preparing for an unforgettable struggle in history. The Hungarian forces, having learned from the painful experience of Legnica, were determined to resist the Mongol strategic genius. Meanwhile, the Mongol army was preparing to showcase their mastery of warfare. Batu Khan and Subutai knew that this battle would be a turning point for Europe. At dawn on the day of the Battle of Mohi, the Mongol army launched a night attack on the Hungarian camp, catching them unprepared. Mongol archers began to disrupt the Hungarian lines with deadly showers of arrows. Despite King Bela's efforts to rally his troops, the Mongols' surprising tactics quickly broke through the defense lines. Subutai's expertly commanded cavalry began to encircle and besiege the Hungarian army. The Mongols made moves to weaken their opponents at every turn, turning the tide of the battle in their favor. The bloody plains of Mohi were under the control of Mongol horses and soldiers. The Hungarian army suffered a devastating defeat. Thousands of soldiers lost their lives, and King Bela barely escaped with his life. The Battle of Mohi not only proved the military superiority of the Mongol armies, but also exposed how defenseless Europe was against the Mongol threat. Batu Khan's victories cast uncertainty over Eastern Europe's future and reinforced the legend of Mongol invincibility. As the Mongol armies continued their advance into the depths of Europe, the devastation and fear they left behind left indelible marks on history. These battles showed just how powerful and ruthless the Mongols could be, marking one of the most significant moments in shaping Europe's fate, etched into the dusty pages of history. As the clatter of Mongol cavalry hooves echoed across Europe's historical stage, the battlefields harbored the bitter taste of both victory and defeat. Batu Khan and Subutai turned the Mongol Empire's power westward, becoming legends with their strategies and warfare tactics that subjugated Europe. Following these battles, Europe had to accept the legend of Mongol invincibility, living under the shadow of Mongol cavalry in this dark period of history. The clatter of hooves in the rural areas of Hungary, the battle cries echoing through the heart of Central Europe, and the screams of cities turned to ruins. As the Mongol armies, ruthless and relentless, continued to ravage Central Europe, they advanced like a dark shadow. Led by Batu Khan and Subutai, the Mongol forces were on a mission not just for conquest, but to instill fear in their enemies. And as they went on this campaign, they left behind destruction and tears. Hungary was defenseless against the Mongol cavalry's attacks. After their victory at the Battle of Mohi, the Mongol armies had set their sights on the kingdom of King Bela IV. These lands, with their gold and riches, were as tempting to the Mongols as they were strategically significant. The vast, fertile lands were like a treasure trove for the Mongols. Villages were set ablaze, towns were leveled, and thousands of people fell victim to this brutal invasion. The Mongols left their mark everywhere, erecting a monument to themselves with the houses they burned and the walls they destroyed. Although Bela tried his best to protect his people, there was little he could do against the Mongols' war tactics and relentless advance. He was defeated on the battlefield, his generals were scattered, and his country's cities fell one by one. The only option left was to flee. As King Bela IV fled west to save himself, the lands he left behind were at the mercy of the Mongols. Throughout his days-long escape, the scenes of destruction left by the Mongol armies served as a reminder of the end. Bela was searching for a safe place behind the mountains and rocky shelter. His flight was both a physical and emotional wreck. He had come to realize the extent of the Mongol threat. The echoes of this plunder were not limited to Hungary. Batu Khan and Subutais' armies now had their eyes set on the fertile lands of Poland and the Czech lands. Europe was trembling at the approaching terror of the Mongol armies. Each Mongol raid advanced like a dark wave spreading into Europe's interior. Even Poland's strong fortifications and brave knights struggled to withstand this ruthless power. The Mongols' attacks, thanks to their strategic intelligence and fast cavalry units, were shattering their enemies' defenses. Bolstered by their victory at the Battle of Legnica, Batu Khan set his sights on the castles of Poland. Kings and dukes tried to unite to counter the Mongol threat, but their efforts were often in vain. Subutais' battle tactics left even Europe's most skilled commanders astonished. The Mongol cavalry expertly used the battlefield, luring their enemies into traps and launching deadly attacks at unexpected moments. Cities like Krakow, Poznan, Wrocław, and many more faced the brutal assaults of the Mongol armies. The people, even at the mention of the Mongols, were seized with terror, trying to cross rivers and flee west. The fall of Poland also posed a significant threat to the Czech lands. King Wenceslaus tried to muster his forces, but holding against the Mongols was nearly impossible. Every village, every town was a stage for the Mongols' ruthless advance. The destruction brought by the war had not only physical but also psychological impacts. People began to believe that the Mongols were unstoppable. In the cities they occupied, the Mongols stood out not only for their warrior skills but also for their clever strategies. Clearly, these attacks were not just acts of plunder, but also attempts to break the enemy's morale and assert the Mongol Empire's superiority. Destroyed churches, burned books, and ruined libraries highlighted that the Mongols were not only a military threat, but also a cultural one. The flight of King Bela IV and other European leaders had an impact beyond the Mongols' military power, planting seeds of fear in their enemies' minds. Batu Khan and Subutai pushed the limits of Mongol power to the fullest in these lands. Europe's villages and cities were being shaken one by the destructive force of the Mongol storm. The Mongols' brutal advance was almost choking Europe's resistance efforts. However, as frightening as these raids were, they would shape Europe's future defense and resistance strategies, leading to a more solid stance against the Mongols' expansionist policies. But at that time, during those dark days, the only reality for the European people was the fear that the Mongols might appear at their doorsteps at any moment. These invasions became one of the greatest examples of how an empire could expand ruthlessly and solidified the Mongols' place in European history. As the clatter of Mongol hooves mixed with the death screams on the battlefield, Europe's fate was being reshaped. These lands had witnessed many wars throughout history, but the Mongols' ruthless power had taught Europe an unforgettable lesson: no fortress, no wall, no army could withstand the Mongol storm forever. The sound of Mongol horses' hooves echoed across the vast European steppes, leaving a new mark on history with every step. Under the command of Batu Khan and Subutai, the Mongol armies were crushing nearly every city they encountered. Their advance toward the heart of Europe was like an unstoppable flood. Villages, towns, and cities were being swept away by the Mongol tempest. These campaigns, starting from the east of the continent, were not only threatening Central Europe, but stretching as far as the Adriatic Sea. It was as if the world map was being reshaped by the hoofprints of Mongol horses. One of the most striking aspects of this grand campaign was the Mongols' strategic brilliance. They were defeating their enemies not only with military power but also through psychological warfare tactics. The Mongols never revealed where they would strike next, catching their enemies off guard with unexpected maneuvers. Even the great cities of Western Europe were living in the shadow of this threat. Venice, Florence, Rome, each was aware they could be the next target. News of the Mongol armies reaching the Adriatic coast had even frightened the most powerful rulers of the West. Even these distant lands were now feeling the breath of Mongol horses. Under Supai's leadership, the Mongol armies reaching the Adriatic coast had instilled fear throughout Europe. These raids showcased not only the Mongols' military capabilities but also their determination and boundless strength. However, the strategic goal behind this expansion was not just to capture new lands but to demonstrate the power of the Mongol Empire to the Western world. The Mongols wanted to show how far they could advance and who would be unable to oppose them. Fear, panic, and helplessness. These were the emotions Europe experienced during those days. The fallen walls of every village, the rising smoke in every city, revealed the limits of the Mongol army's reach. But just as the Mongol advance was continuing powerfully, an unexpected development occurred. After the death of Genghis Khan, the meetings and dynastic conflicts over the empire's leadership forced Batu Khan to retreat. Batu Khan had to make a crucial decision for the future of the Mongol Empire, even though he could have advanced deep into Central Europe. To strengthen the power of the Golden Horde and establish a lasting rule in his own lands, he decided to withdraw from Europe. This decision changed the fate of both the Mongol armies and Europe. The Mongols' retreat provided Europe with a chance to breathe. However, it also meant that the Mongols were shifting their focus from completing their conquest to further consolidating their power. Batu Khan's return marked the beginning of a period where the Golden Horde reached the peak of its power. This showed that the Mongols were not just pursuing a temporary conquest in Europe but had long-term plans. When Batu Khan returned, he was not only a conqueror but also the leader of a powerful state. The Golden Horde became an empire with extensive lands, a solid administrative structure, control over trade routes, and cultural enrichment. The wealth gained from the Mongol raids strengthened this state, provided prosperity to its people, and further solidified its governance. Although the Mongol withdrawal from Europe was a relief for the Western world, the rise of the Golden Horde continued to be a lasting threat on the eastern borders. Their dominance over trade routes continued to affect the West's economy and politics. This state had become one of the most powerful and influential branches of the Mongol Empire. Batu Khan's determination and leadership turned the Golden Horde into not just a military power but also a cultural and economic center. So even though the Mongols had withdrawn from Europe, their influence continued to loom over the continent like a shadow. Batu Khan was aware that he had left an unforgettable legacy with the marks he left behind in the lands he withdrew from. Mongol horses advancing into the heart of Europe had conquered not just the battlefields but also the minds of people. With the establishment of the Golden Horde, the Mongols were no longer just invaders but had become a settled power. This new era guaranteed that the Mongols would remain a permanent actor on the world stage, engage in cultural and political interactions throughout history, and always be remembered. Batu Khan's decision to withdraw from Europe was a move demonstrating the Mongol Empire's flexibility and strategic intelligence. Leaving behind territories gained through warfare might have seemed like a retreat to many leaders. However, for the Mongols, it was a move made in the interest of the empire's long-term goals. During this period, Mongols' diplomatic skills came into play alongside their military power. Contacts with European leaders, trade agreements, and new strategic alliances were proof that the Mongol Empire operated with a broad perspective. For them, every battle and campaign was not just a victory, but also a part of long-term plans. Thus, as the Mongols withdrew, shaking Europe and leaving their mark behind, they solidified the foundations of the Golden Horde and cemented their powerful presence on the historical stage. The people of Europe saw this withdrawal not as a victory but as a harbinger of another coming storm. The Mongols' withdrawal, the rise of the Golden Horde, and the new balances struck between the West and East were heralds of events that would change the course of history. The marks left by Mongol horses would remain as unforgettable memories of one of the most tumultuous and influential periods in world history. We've reached the end of another story. But this isn't just any ordinary tale, it's the echo of a saga hidden in the dusty pages of history, still resonating even today. From the Fourth Crusade to the rise of Genghis Khan and the Mongol Empire, and their armies advancing to the very gates of Europe, we've journeyed through this epic step by step. This isn't merely a series of events from the past, it's one of the greatest turning points in human history. Every battle, every conquest, every fall of a dynasty reshaped history, building the world we know today. From the sacked Constantinople of the Fourth Crusade to the Mongol army's staggering advance westward, Europe's trembling kingdoms and their attempts at resistance. Each of these was a part of a grand game where power and ambition, strategy and defeat intertwined. And perhaps the greatest lesson of history lies here: no matter how great the power or how formidable an empire appears, every rise has a fall, and every victory has a price. Genghis Khan was born as the Lord of the Steppes, but even the empire he built eventually fragmented into different khanates. The Mongols' mark on Europe was once remembered with fear, but time, as it does with all things, has faded that memory. Looking back today, what we see is not just conquests and wars, but also a reflection of courage that pushed humanity's boundaries, strategic brilliance, and one of history's greatest power struggles. These empires left not only land but also fear, admiration, and the desire to survive to the rulers and people of their time. The reason I recount all this as if I've witnessed it myself is to ensure we don't forget the lessons history teaches us and to look to the future guided by them. As I leave you with the echoes of this grand saga, I want you to think about how these tales hidden in the shadows of the past have shaped our lives today. Every empire, every war, every victory and defeat paved the way to where we are now, to the world we live in. Perhaps one day in another story, chasing another saga, we will meet again. Until then, keep tracing the footprints of history and remember to listen for the voice of wisdom in every line.